People who have traveled to North Korea, what was your biggest shock of the trip? I have a rather unique perspective here. I went with a Chinese tour group. Even though I am not Chinese, I was one of 2 foreign passport holders on the trip, and I am happy to answer questions. A couple of my old photos are currently on my Reddit profile, so feel free to check that out. Most surprising was probably the overt racism I experienced at Kim Il-sung's birthplace in a random park in Pyongyang. All the Chinese were allowed in, but I was forced to wait outside by some overzealous army guard. Everyone else was totally chill though, especially the 2 guides who were lovely. The food was horrible. Think dried fish reheated in hot soup. It smelled so bad. It quickly became very depressing. We got a glimpse of the workers in a field, sitting in the hard rain on a row, planting with their bare hands or tiny tools. No cover for rain. One had a thin red plastic bag on his upper body. I remember how it flapped in the wind. A guard soldier, very young boy, watched over them in his long coat and huge hat, rifle in his hand. I'll never forget that image of despair, and I've seen it load of depressing hardcore places around the world. It's probably not exactly answering the question the way you want, but my convoy of vehicles struck and killed a man on a bicycle a few hours north of Pyongyang. We were being escorted by the military, and so one of the translators started yelling at the driver that we needed to pull over and render aid. He kind of shrugged, laughed, and said that the roads belonged to the government and that was a risk he took by using it. So, guess that was the biggest shock? Sigh. My North Korean handlers were startlingly candid about their own frustrations with their country, but generally specifically on bus trips, where there was absolutely no surveillance. Surveillance was in general much more limited than any American would tend to assume. Tech resources are indeed limited in that country. My group, as one of the Western guides put it, was just not that damn interesting. People who have traveled to North Korea, what was your biggest shock of the trip? How dedicated to the idea that literally everything in the country is weird or surreal or bizarre or sad other foreign visitors were going to be. We'd pass by the most mundane thing ever, and someone would inevitably mutter, "God, it's just so wild." I didn't travel there, but I was leading a cooking class in the basement of a shelter, and halfway through, 2 women were brought in who had just escaped North Korea and arrived at the shelter that afternoon. I had so many questions that I couldn't ask, felt so lucky to meet them and wonder how their life in Canada turned out. Met a British guy at a bar in Vietnam who told me he helped run tours in NK. I figured he was bullshitting me, but he pulled out his phone and showed me a bunch of photos from his work. Sure enough, he was legit. He said the people are all very friendly and are just stuck under a horrible government. I haven't been there, but in one picture I saw of one of their shops, the cup sizes on the bras are huge. They were so big that I wondered if they doubled as watermelon carriers. Dolly Parton would look like an A-cup standing next to women with hooters that fill out those bras. Big empty roads. I did a bus tour around the Kaesong area in 2008 and we were the only vehicles on the road except for our escort. The other weird thing was the soldiers randomly stationed in the middle of a field stood at attention, probably a little theater for us. I haven't been, but know someone who has. They said there were pictures of their current leader everywhere. This person was from a country that was known to put up more than a few pictures of their own leader, but they said was in a whole other league. Went to the DMZ. Nothing truly shocking given the already abysmal public image of NK, but what surprised me was the continued effects of the split on Korean families who lost relatives after the 2 countries divided. I've never been there, but I read the book Pyongyang, by Guy Delisle. It illustrates quite literally. It's a graphic novel about his experience in North Korea. Loved it, definitely recommend. I have never been there, but the biggest shock from people that have is they have 28 government approved haircuts, and you cannot have a haircut that is not government approved. Very large shops, but very few items in them with little to no variety. Just one type of coffee, one type of chocolate, one type of cheap toy for the kids. Meeting my wife. Really recommend Koryo tours. They're awesome. I saw videos of a tourist using a computer in the library and all around him North Koreans that just stare at their screen and do nothing. I've been to the border. I guess it was interesting to see the NK soldiers watching us with binoculars from their guard towers. Not me, but my dad traveled there when he was 11. The only thing he can tell me about the trip is that he got a cool watch. How I just ended up more confused with the place. However, definitely a top 5 trip, and I'm one who travels as much as I can. A State of Mind is an interesting documentary about North Korea. I wonder, are there any wild animals left there? I know they thrive in the demilitarized zone, but beyond that, I'm curious why anyone would go to North Korea if not for something like business, but as a vacation made me pay with American money. I wanted to exchange some but they want that nice fiat money. HET Reddit being Reddit as usual with the not me but responses.